All right, let's see what's going on here real quick.
Rationale is if you have country X that's allowing a product made with forced labor into their market, that harms American producers because the price of product X is coming way down. It's made with forced labor. So that's harming American producers because they have to compete with these products that are made with forced labor that are being sold at very low prices. That's the justification that the United States is weighing.
Meanwhile, President Trump is upset that the U.S. Senate has not passed his Save America Act. The controversial bill toughens voter identification rules, but it does not currently have the votes to pass. To be adopted, some Democrats would have to vote with Republicans to cross the 60-vote threshold. Another option would be to change Senate rules so the bill could pass with a simple majority. But many Republicans oppose that move. On Thursday, the White House press secretary, Caroline Leavitt, confirmed that Mr. Trump is frustrated with the leader of the Senate for the Republicans, John Thune. Listen to both of them.
The president seemed yesterday frustrated with Leader Thune when he was speaking in Georgia. Is his patience running out with Leader Thune?
The president spoke about this directly yesterday. His patience is running out. He wants to see as much of the Save America passed as possible by the August recess.
Maybe she or somebody else ought to get on the phone and get the votes. Right? It's 50 around here. So instead of, pointing the finger at Republicans, they might think about going after the people who are stopping it on the floor, which is the Democrats. And if there are Republicans that they think are gettable, get on the phone.
Let's bring back our political panel. Melanie Mason, Politico Bureau Chief for California, and former Democratic strategist Bob Shrum. Bob, that was pretty blunt from Senator Thune right there. Clearly frustration on both sides.
Look, the word loser is right. It's just that Trump is applying it to the wrong person. He ought to be looking in a mirror because in terms of what's happening in the Middle East, in terms of the tariffs and their impact on inflation, where we're headed in the midterms, and the Save America Act, all of it, he's not going to win any of it. I mean, look, there are Republicans who will not vote for this. It's not
and
just
why is
Democrats.
that?
What
is the Republican opposition?
Let's say a woman gets married and she takes her husband's name. Where's her birth certificate? Her birth certificate is going to have the name she was given when she was born. It's a ludicrous proposition. Nobody is against enforcing election laws, and there is very little evidence, according to the Heritage Foundation, which did a study on this. There's very little evidence that there's any cheating in elections. But what he wants to do is shrink the voter pool and hopefully get to the point where lots of folks, especially minorities and Hispanics and African Americans, can't vote. And he thinks that'll help the Republicans.
Of course, he says this is all about election integrity. He's worried that
He
people
said he won in 2020.
who are here illegally are going to vote. He points to what happened in New Jersey, where they had people that were registered to vote who should not have been registered to vote, and he points to the fact that voter ID is
that wasn't fraud. That was the DMV.
No, it was an error of the computer. But these are his points. But Melanie, to the broader politics of this moment, in one of my favorite shows, Hamilton, there's a song where they say they don't have the votes. And in this case, or you don't have the votes. Right. And in this case, you don't have the votes, right?
Right. I mean, how much more blunt can Senator Thune be? And in fact, challenging the president, go find the votes. And I think the fact that you're seeing resistance from his own party, and remember, there are quite a few senators right now who don't feel like they owe very much to Donald Trump. I mean, people like Senator John Cornyn of Texas or Tom Tillis of North Carolina. I mean, their careers are effectively over because of, the president not endorsing them or not backing them. And so why would they do him a solid right now if they don't necessarily believe in the policy, nor do they really want to get behind this priority?
Yeah, there's sort of a karma thing going on when it comes to some of that as well. Meanwhile, President Trump has had this notoriously complicated relationship with the media. He loves the media. He watches more of it than just about any president we've ever had. He watches TV all the time. He may be watching now. If so, Mr. President, thank you for watching. But then he often slams the media publicly and then chats with them privately. The White House Correspondents' Dinner obviously got postponed because of the shooting that was there. Tomorrow, the White House Correspondents' Dinner is happening. President Trump is there and going to be speaking. Why was this so important for him, and how do you reflect on his relationship with the media?
Well, I have to think that the White House Correspondents Association feels a little bit relieved right now because the administration has backed away from the subpoenas that they were doing of these New York Times reporters with regards to their reporting on Air Force One, because that would have been a very awkward
Yeah, so this
dinner.
was the DOJ today announced that these subpoenas are not going to be enforced, and that announcement happening probably not coincidentally right before this dinner begins.
Right, because look, a reporter's, relationships or the reporter's commitments to their supporters, that's sacrosanct. And so the fact that the administration was seeking to get these reporters to divulge that information, that really is, I think, for a lot of reporters, a red line. And so if that had been going on at this dinner, if that was the subtext, I think that would have been very awkward. And look, I think we should note that there have been Democrats and Republican presidents who have clashed with the media over things like this. President Obama had subpoenaed phone records of reporters. So this is not unique to President Trump, but I think that you're right in that it is unique in terms of.
But the fact of the matter is, he does have a tendency of wanting to target various journalists, which basically is turning this into a sacrilege type moment of a stalemate. I have something to say as we're ending this up onto what they're talking about here.
Those of us that were in that room were deeply appreciative of. It'll be interesting to see the tone of his remarks in the hours ahead. I'm curious, as somebody, you have been to many of these dinners over many years, do you think that we should still do them? What do you say to critics who look around the country and think that it looks very out of touch? And
well, they raise a lot of scholarship money for people at the White House Correspondents' Dinner, so there's a rationale for doing it. Turning them into nerd proms is probably something you don't have to do. And by the way, if the president's watching, let me make him change channels. In terms of these subpoenas, Joe Biden had set a whole series of standards that you had to follow before you could even ask a reporter about this. And he's just ignored those standards. And the federal judge today basically said, if you don't withdraw those subpoenas, I'm going to quash them.
One of the last times you were here, we actually did get word that he was watching your segment, although he complimented the Republican panelists and not you. Bob, thank you for being on. Melanie, always great to see you both as well. As global trade faces disruptions in the Strait of Hormuz, a separate maritime dispute is putting another crucial sea route at risk. We're talking about the South China Sea. It's home to a strategically significant spot, the Scarborough Shoal, which is claimed by both the Philippines and by China. Scarborough Shoal is not far from the Philippine coast and falls inside the Philippines' economic exclusion zone. But that is not stopping China from throwing its weight around. CNN's Ivan Watson is on a boat traveling through these contested waters, and there were some tense moments. Here's his report.
Hey there, Alex. That's right. We're in the South China Sea. I'm aboard a Philippine government vessel. It is currently being shadowed by a Coast Guard ship from China, which is kind of a speck on the horizon here. The situation a couple of hours ago was dramatically different. You had Chinese Coast Guard ships surrounding this ship, as well as several other ships from the Philippine Bureau of Fisheries, and operating in very close proximity to the ship where I am right now. I would say 7-10 yards away off the port bow, and blasting it with water cannons repeatedly. It was tense. At times it looked like the Chinese ship might ram us, perhaps even accidentally. All told, it was a confrontation where the Chinese maritime security forces were trying to prevent this and several other Philippine government boats from approaching Scarborough Shoal, one of several hotspots in the South China Sea that both China and the Philippines claim for themselves. In the case of Scarborough, Chinese forces have basically controlled this uninhabited rock for the last couple of years, stopping Filipino fisher folks from being able to fish there. and rejecting a competing claim from the Philippines where they claim to own it. The fact of the matter is that China basically claims almost all of the South China Sea for itself, disregarding competing claims from the Philippines, Malaysia, Taiwan, Vietnam, Brunei. And what we've seen out in this part of this rare opportunity is how these two governments are engaged in a test of wills, where neither side is willing to back down, and they frequently have their ships and planes coming in very close contact. There have been skirmishes that have led to damage to the ships, injuries to personnel as well. And this is a bizarre scene that plays itself out over and over again out in these contested waters week after week. And we got a very rare up and close view of just how strange this is. Giant ships. According to the Philippines, at least 26 Philippine and Chinese ships out here in the last couple of hours in very close proximity, coming within yards of each other. Fortunately, nobody reported to be hurt, but a strange maritime drama that plays itself out in these waters week after week.
Ivan Watson, thank you for that. It's been 1 month since a pair of devastating earthquakes rocked parts of Venezuela. Still to
I want to weigh in on what's going on here pertaining to the anxiety. I just got to picking up on a broadcast earlier regarding the same thing going on in the air aviation, pertaining to NORAD basically protecting not only America but also Canada, which they have an outstanding good relationship with one another. But here lately, it has been very, very strenuous regarding either Russia planes or China planes or all the above, basically challenging NORAD. That I think the way that they talked earlier today, that they had basically lost track of how many close incidences that has occurred just within the past few years of them basically being provoked or challenged, whatever word that you want to use. And I just want to weigh in and comment on that regarding this is what happens, okay? Whenever you're trying to beat the horse on the wrong end, this is what happens. Whenever you have all this tension that's setting itself up towards an accident happening, and the next thing you know, the accident will turn into a mishap to the degree that somebody thinks that they've done it intentionally, and the next thing you know, an all-out and out conflict will happen. This is what happens. Because of this, and because we seem to be at a stalemate, I have prayed and prayed and prayed about this, and I have come to the conclusion that the only way that this is going to be abolished regarding all the tension and regarding the Abraham Accords in agreement to what's going on is to side with Benjamin Netanyahu, the leader over in Israel. And basically, if I win this confrontation, physical duel, if I win, the Pakistani people will remain like they are. If Saudi Arabia, pertaining to the devil and his candidate, wins, then Pakistani will become an actual authentic government or a state to be recognized. And I don't do this too often towards changing my mind. I don't look at things in a different perspective, but because the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few, I am willing to do a 180 in regards towards the duel still going on. If they're willing to sign off in and no accountability in basically killing the leadership of the second leader coming into power pertaining to Saudi Arabia, because I despise those people, and I know it may not be right, and me and the Lord Jesus is going to have a long talk one day whenever I finally execute from this world down here and go to the hereafter world. But I do not like them people. I still love their initial souls, but whenever it comes to the things that they have done in the past, I cannot find it in my heart to bring myself to forgive them. And how many Christians have paid the ultimate sacrifice pertaining to their Sharia messed up, deranged, raghead laws over there. This really bothers me in seeing how that we have clashed and coming together, because who in God's name would have thought that they would have been for the Pakistani people becoming their own government entity? I never would have thought that. But once more, you got to figure that you got a group of people that's doing any and everything that they can in trying to backpedal, crawfish, and looking acceptable in the eyes of the international, national, global society. So everything that has come out of them people's mouths, as far as I'm concerned, for the past 30 years, Saudi Arabia has been evil, evil thought, evil motivated, evilly designed, as well as masterminded 9/11.
It's been out their back, let's just say.
Okay. That sounds a little bit like a euphemism, but who knows? Is there any evidence that you were able to find to suggest that Don Jr. was improperly influencing government policy or government contracts, or alternatively had some early insight into how those policies would evolve?
No, there was no evidence of that. And I mean, he told us, and he told me in interviews, he talks to his father every few weeks, never discusses business. But I did not find any evidence of that, of them like influencing. I think the question.
Continue to fuel wildfires sweeping across parts of France, Spain and Italy. The Spanish government has declared a national emergency in the Madrid region and the neighbouring province of Avila because of wildfires. Thousands of people have been evacuated in southwest France, including close to 9,000 people in the Gironde region. Across the continent, there's drought, strained water supplies and tinder-dry ground cover, helping wildfires spread. Here's Nick Beak.
Spanish police officers try to calm an elderly woman, rescued as smoke descends on her home.
And this is another reason why that I'm willing to do a 180 as far as siding with Benjamin Yahoo over there, because I'm seeing too much suffering going on right now that is having an effect in not only my life, but everybody else's life that has any caring concern about their fellow man.
Up all night, waiting, this woman says. We were really scared. British talk.
You don't have to be a brain scientist to figure out that these things are getting worse and worse by the second.
Filmed this evacuation from a campsite.
We've been wondering all morning if we were going to be evacuated or not, and in the last 10 minutes the police have come round and they've told us that we've got 30 minutes to get out. So now there's a bit of a scramble with everyone here just packing up their cars and making a dash for it.
Before and after images from Sicily show just how much land is being scorched. Temperatures of 40 degrees Celsius in parts of southern Europe fueling the spread.
Way over 100 degrees.
On the Italian island, 6,000 members of the emergency services are trying to contain the situation. This wildfire season is already one of the worst in the past 20 years for the area of land burned inside the European Union. And we're only halfway through the summer.
And you keep in mind, more of this occurs that's going to affect the delinquishing of our good air supply and also poisoning the atmosphere from above.
Who had a surreal start to the night, stepping out of a TARDIS before declaring the 23rd edition open, a nod to the fact that police boxes were designed by the Scottish architect Gilbert Mackenzie Trench. Glasgow came to the rescue to host the tournament at short notice after Australia pulled out.
Is hateful.
Yeah, Europe is in a very different position than the US. It doesn't have much of an ability to tap its own reserves, and it's very reliant on the countries. So the Middle East situation is more complex than before, and then these tariffs are put on top of that. So you can tell from ECB today that clearly they're indicating there are going to be rate hikes potentially, and I think that is where we're going from here, which will affect the economy negatively, but already a slow, low growth rate in Europe.
Absolutely, absolutely. Whenever you have desperate times, you have desperate means, you have desperate people that does desperate things.
To withhold billions of dollars in disaster aid and counterterrorism funding. That lawsuit filed by a coalition of 26 Democratic-led states argues that the administration is using federal funding to force states to change their election systems. That's despite no evidence of widespread voter fraud it claims to be addressing. States could lose 20% of funding under this policy. The grants help states prepare for terror attacks, cybersecurity.
And that's blackmail, really, if you're just thinking about it. And how Trump is trying to force people into doing things against their will. And if they don't do it, then they get penalized pretending to taking money from them. That's blackmail. No other ifs, ands, buts about it. That's supposed to be illegal, to be able to conduct order that way. It's sad.
To Jessica Uriola was left alone with her daughters in Houston, Texas, after her husband was detained by ICE and deported to Venezuela in 2025.
Salió a trabajar. He left for work, and that day, immigration officers stopped him.
It's a mess. It's all a big mess. It's a big, big mess. No ifs, ands, buts about it. It's a big mess going all the way back to the transformation of the Reagans and the Bushes that I guess people don't care. We're in the mess. We're in the storm. And they don't want to break it down and look at it and simplify it. They rather just continue to go root hog and die, not understanding, or maybe they do understand what the consequences are going to be eventually for the younger generation. And that's the really, really sad part about all this. We have the professional industry out there, regardless whether it be politically or religiously or financially or any other way, that can read the handwriting on the wall, right? They know the trajectory that we're on right now is a negative one. But rather than somebody sit down and try to compromise or renegotiate, they're basically stonewalled. They're at a stalemate. So rather than the stalemate continue on, rather than seeing how this is affecting so many millions of people's lives all over the world, especially seeing how Mother Nature is responding and reacting regarding what man is doing to the planet right now, because everything is on a time release basis. You know what? I've said it ain't worth it. Though deep down inside, I originally and probably always will believe that the Pakistani people has just as much right of being their own governmental entity as the people in Ukraine or any other well-known authentic group of people out there that's willing to fight for their democracy and fight for the things that they believe in pertaining to their rights. I'm willing to compromise on that and go with Benjamin Yahoo versus my originally intent. And like I said, the only reason why that Saudi Arabia is doing what they're doing right now is to butter up to the international world to think that they're good people. And there's nothing about their ideology. There's nothing about the things that they have done or are doing or will do that is good. Now, you can look at it from two different perspectives like you can with anything. But the bottom line is this, and Donald Trump, I agree with Donald Trump on this. The only reason why that those people have become recognizable in the past 50 years is because our dumb people over here, pretending to past tensively politicians, have allowed for them, given them the keys and said, here you go, do what you wish, and they become rich off of the oil. And because they've got a stance now, making a stronghold, now people has to acknowledge them. Well, you can unreveal the mask, you can unreveal the camouflage, you can unreveal the smoke and mirrors all you want, and the bottom line is evil is still evil, good is still good. I'm going to stand up for the righteousness of good regardless how many people don't like it or hate it.
New Emerson College poll finds that Democrats have a double-digit 11-point advantage on the generic congressional ballot, leading Republicans 53% to 42%.
You can't go along with them polls. They'll change them polls every other day towards sliding one way just as quick as they do the other. You tend to wonder if they're just making that stuff up half the time because, like I said, one day it's this way, another day it's that way, by the same group of people. It's like, wow.
The future. We'd want to know that.
It's like, I thought you said it was this way, and now it's that way. Well, I thought you said it was that way, and now it's this way. It's mixed up. They don't have no course of action. Their rule of thumb is no longer considered stable. And because of their instability, it has made other countries distable, especially if you'll add 9/11, if you'll add COVID, if you'll add those little countries that's already been struggling all these years, they're basically doomed. They're doomed if we do not come to a compromisable conclusion in all this. They're basically doomed.
Assad's playing his cards right. First of all, he's focused on his re-election campaign. He's running away with it based on the polls right now. I agree with what he said earlier today. It's going to be a lot closer than 9%, but it's probably not going to be as close as it should be in Georgia. And keep in mind, Governor Brian Kemp, they tried to recruit him to run. He would have been their best candidate to make it competitive, and he said no because he didn't think he could beat Assad. So you're looking at a guy who is going viral on the internet, is raising a ton of money, looks the part, seems like he's done everything right. He's vetted nationally. I think he'd be a strong candidate in 28 if he ran.
You forgot the most important part, Georgetown graduate. And you know all people who went to Georgetown, Mike, are great.
I mean, I went to American, so, and I went to Notre Dame. So.
I'll take it.
And then you got the typical political rhetoric that people get in behind that basically puts more emphasis upon the party than they do the people. And that's wrong too. Regardless of whether it be Republican or Democrat. That's wrong too.
And the other thing too is you're getting like big time recognition from donors too. I mean, you've had, including NFL Commissioner Roger Goodell, New England Patriots owner Robert Kraft, Broncos owner Walton, Atlanta Falcons. I mean, dude, you are raking it. Forget the money. The notoriety behind
previous right. So we start to see pump prices go up. We start to see what's called the crack, so the difference between the crude price and refined products, so things like petrol, diesel and aviation fuel, that starts to get much bigger, so diesel, petrol, aviation fuel start to increase in price once again. And given how dependent many of the economies are across the world on crude and the number of products that flushes through into in terms of plastic production and food transportation.
Irregularities pertaining to unstableness causes fear. Fear causes panic. And that's what we're seeing right now pertaining to the oil market.
Oil reserves. The US is now at their lowest levels since 1983. Just how much longer can they do that?
Yeah, it's a great question. You know, the reserve release has been a significant source of optimism, I guess, in the oil system so far, because that's kept some of that supply side more balanced and therefore has kept the peak off the prices. But there is only so much supply that you can release, and given that that hasn't been refilled in the recent cessation, and we are in that real low period, we start to see us playing with the edges of things that we haven't done before. So, you know, much as we say there's X number of barrels within the storage, actually there's a residual level where you can't go below. There's an operating threshold, an operating floor, if you like, where systems still have to be pressurized, where you still have to keep that minimum. And we're getting quite close to that in a number of phases. And that will, and the worry about that will start to, will continue to put upwards pressure on that price as well.
Now, from one looming...
Based on supply and demand. There you go.
This one's a familiar one. The Trump administration has imposed sweeping new tariffs on America's trading partners to replace the ones struck down by the US Supreme Court earlier this year. The Section 301 import taxes are...
And then you got this to have to contend with, too.
In supply chains, a tax of between 10 and 12.5% will be charged on goods imported into the US, with exemptions for oil and gas, fertilizer, and some food.
And really and truly, Walmart, the Walton family, and the big conglomerates over here that compromised and done this to us, they should stand and give an account for this.
Came into force an hour and a half ago, just as a temporary 10% tariff imposed by the president expired. Tariffs have been a cornerstone of President Trump's trade policy aimed at shrinking America's trade deficit and bringing back manufacturing to the U.S.
That has been nothing but a failure, as far as I'm concerned.
As the answers.
You confused about tariffs? I feel you. First, there were Liberation Day tariffs that were imposed, then suspended, then imposed again, and then ultimately found to be illegal. Then came Section 232 that were announced and then modified. And then, of course, there was Section 122, and then there was Section 301, and
Tariffs are going to make us rich as hell. These tariffs are going to give us growth like you haven't seen before. Tariffs is the most beautiful word to me in the dictionary.
President Trump loves tariffs, but the real question is, are they working? Have they raised money for the government? Yes. According to the Tax Foundation, the Liberation Day tariffs raised $166 billion in the year 2025. But that money is to be refunded after the Supreme Court said that the original tariffs were illegal. Have manufacturing jobs come back to the U.S.? Well, not really, according to government data. It shows that manufacturing employment has actually fallen since the first tariffs were imposed. Have they lowered U.S. imports? Well, not really. U.S. imports have been steadily increasing since the beginning of the year, and in May, they reached near record highs. And are Americans paying more? Well, inflation was already a problem, but according to research by the Yale Budget Lab earlier this year, they estimate that American households are paying 1.5% more because of tariffs.
Samira has
1.5% more, which is eating into people's pocketbooks.
Tennessee. I asked her if her head is spinning from the constantly shifting world of Trump's tariffs.
It's like the daisy chain of tariffs. One tariff goes away, another one takes its place. And what we haven't seen is overall relief for many industries. The Section 301 tariffs that did come into effect about a half hour ago here in the United States do have more carve-outs than we've ever seen in any of the other trade remedies, specifically food, some textiles, which was surprising to...
While they're carving things out, there's got to be a fill-in. And you know who's producing the fill-in? The American people.
Oil and gas to protect against some of the other pressures that are happening in the oil and gas industry.
That is fascinating.
So you take a little bit from one while you give a little bit from the other.
Thought that these tariffs, for what they do stand for, that those areas that didn't get a carve out, might still get struck down and the money refunded, as has happened with the other tariffs in the past?
The Section 301 has seemed to really insulate the administration from being sued for not having grounds to assess the tariffs. The Section 301 authority is clear, and it gives the president the authority to assess tariffs on things that could impact U.S. citizens or the economy. And this argument that the lack of forced labor enforcement by essentially the whole world has resulted in economic impact is seen to fare better in courts, but we do expect a challenge like every other tariff remedy that has come into play in the U.S.
Okay, so a sense that it's maybe on stronger legal ground, but not necessarily.
The slice of the pies are getting thinner, okay? And the fact of the matter is there's only a certain amount of space at the table. And if you're not sitting at the table, basically, you're on the menu, which is not a good thing. So that's what's happening right now, and I guarantee you, the unfortunate countries out there, the smaller countries, the countries that hadn't been well developed, are going to be the ones that's going to suffer the worst.
Come back to the customers.
In addition to the American people suffering right now.
Yes, that's what we've seen overall.
So beating the horse at the wrong end is affecting all of our lives. If you don't believe me, go fill up your gas tank.
Back, but we have not seen resolution of those cases yet.
And stay in the US because shares of Intel have surged after the chip giant predicted revenues could hit almost $17 billion next quarter. Intel is benefiting from the rush to build AI data centers, the company warning earlier this year it could not manufacture its central processing units fast enough to meet demand. It's investing $20 billion this year in ramping up production. But some on Wall Street are getting increasingly nervous about the spiraling cost of AI. Some $760 billion were wiped off the top big tech companies, the so-called Magnificent Seven, during Thursday's trade after Google owner Alphabet and Tesla revealed the pace they are burning through cash in the AI race. Ed Zitron is an independent tech analyst and an AI skeptic who has warned the industry could be heading for a Lehman Brothers moment. I asked him how nervous Wall Street is at the moment.
I think they're waiting for something to go wrong. You mentioned $760 billion came off the market. That's about how much money Amazon, Meta, Google, and Microsoft are planning to spend on GPUs and AI data centers. And to this point, not one of them has actually disclosed their real AI revenues. They'll come up with all sorts of metrics, but never the one that actually matters. And that's what's making Wall Street nervous.
Okay, so they're waiting for something to go wrong, but you're predicting it. Just explain to the viewers, why do you describe OpenAI as the Lehman Brothers of AI? And because you've been looking at the figures, haven't you, for OpenAI?
Yes, I have. And I reported that OpenAI lost $20.9 billion last year on $13.07 billion of revenue. They lose astonishing amounts of money, and worse still, they make up, I estimate, at least 50 to 60% of all AI compute demand in the world, and as much as 60 or 70% along with Anthropic of all AI revenues. OpenAI is a load-bearing company, and on top of that, they are losing tens of billions of dollars a year, and they're planning to burn over $800 billion. Oracle, Cerebras, Nebius, Iron, Microsoft, Amazon, Google to an extent, CoreWeave as well. There are so many companies that have built their remaining performance obligations and their futures on the idea that OpenAI will pay them.
Right,
Except OpenAI can't afford it.
You're describing a kind of domino effect or a contagion effect that would spread out if OpenAI failed.
Yes, and what's worse about it is it's pretty much unavoidable. Oracle is committed to build about $400 billion worth of data centers, 7.1 gigawatts worth, and they cannot afford to do it, so they're taking on ruinous debt. The only way that OpenAI will be able to afford those data centers is if they become the single most profitable, they're not even close right now, they lose tons of money, company in history. It is simply not possible.
Ed, a very quick one before we go. You called it in December 2024. Should you not reevaluate your thesis?
I was wrong about the timing of the market. I'm not wrong about the internal economics or really anything about the bubble at large.
So when's it going to happen?
I think that that's unrealistic for me to predict, but I think next year is quite likely at this point. The steam is running out.
Still to come on the program.
The steam is running out. In other words, reality is finally setting in regarding how much it's going to cost, water, energy, etc. Look good on paper pertaining to theory, But now, whenever the rubber meets the road, it's not really panning out to be that great of a deal now, is it, pertaining to your AI investments, especially whenever you have all the piracy going on that's playing with the stock market purposely so that the conglomerates come out on top every time. Now, I'm not the smartest or the sharpest knife in the drawer per se, but I am smart enough to see where the average everyday old Joe is being hustled, is being bamboozled in seeing one thing, but in reality experiencing the very opposite. Sleight of the hands. When are the real people going to speak out and speak up about what's actually occurring here? Because to me, it's as obvious as the nose on somebody's face.
Cerise. That's according to the boss of Europe's biggest defence contractor, BAE Systems. Speaking to the BBC at the Farnborough Air Show this week, Charles Woodburn welcomed the recent boost to UK defence spending, but said much more would be needed to hit the government's commitment to spend 3.5% of GDP on defence by 2035. Our business editor Simon Jack asked him how he would assess the global threat level right now.
Hi.
By far the most threatening time that we see. And I think there's always a balance for a government as to just how straightforward and honest they are of the threats that they see out there. Obviously, working in the industry, we are closer to the threat. And even back when I joined this company in 2016, I was amazed at what we were seeing in the North Atlantic, what we were seeing Russian submarines doing, the cyber attacks happening on the UK.
See what I was talking about as far as tension?
This industry we're aware of, it is not as widely known as it should be. Now, I think that's come a long way, and sadly, as a result of the Ukraine conflict, people are much more aware of the proximity of conflict now with a hot war in Europe. But we still have some way to go, I think, to make sure that the overall population genuinely understand the threat we face, and it is quite profound.
Do you think we're being a bit complacent yet?
For sure we are being complacent,
Absolutely.
and we have been for quite some time. But we have to make the case that this is money well spent to deter our adversaries, and whilst investing in defence might look expensive, the cost of a war, I mean, stating the obvious, is a massive increase over the cost of deterring a war. And the flip side of that is, in industry, we have to make sure that we do our part, that we employ people, that we offer good skills, well-paid jobs across the length and breadth of the UK. And I think making sure that the industrial benefits, the jobs benefits, the prosperity benefits are well told is something that we really need to do, continue to push for people to understand this is money well spent.
Let's stay in the UK because funding growing defence demands is just one of the problems facing the new Prime Minister Andy Burnham. On Thursday, he announced support for struggling pubs and entertainment venues, the latest policy move in his first week in office. That's also seen him cut tax on energy bills and cap bus fares. Well, today, he will chair a meeting of the National Economic Council in Manchester as part of his plan to shift power from London to regions across the country. But will soaring energy prices and rising borrowing costs scupper his economic plans before they have even got underway? Ross Mould is investment director at AJ Bell, and I asked him whether there are general wins to be had from devolution.
I think Mr. Burnham clearly believes there is great potential for wins here. He feels the country's become too focused on the southeast of England, big economic engine as it is, and that there are opportunities for growth that can be unlocked. And when you have big national infrastructure projects like the high-speed 2 train network that just turned into a bit of a disaster, you can see why perhaps he might try and devolve some power and try and get local challenges addressed and to use his speech to get growth going in every postcode. But there are still challenges here. Some local authorities have a terrible financial record of their own. They've been involved in projects like house building and renewable energy that have been badly run and gone wrong. And there have been attempts to take power away from Treasury and Westminster before. Harold Wilson's Department of Economic Affairs in the 1960s didn't last very long and didn't actually make very much difference. So a case unproven, but let's see if it goes. And hopefully, yes, it can help the UK's pretty poor GDP growth record.
Finally to Edinburgh,
but only if it goes
today,
perfectly right. Only if it goes perfectly right. And we know that it's not. You can look at space exports, Elon Musk, and how many accidents that they've had recently and not even be able to get off the launch pad. Come on. Come on. We see where this is heading. And it's going to be we, the people, that's going to pay for it.
It is on overnight stays along with Amsterdam, Berlin and Vienna. But will it put tourists off? I spoke to Jane Marr, leader of Edinburgh City Council. She told me more about the levy and what it will be spent on.
So this levy will be spent on making Edinburgh remaining a visitor destination to the high standard that people expect, so that we can see cleaner streets. We've already got yesterday a new street cleaning.
As far as I'm concerned, what they're doing right now is only adding insult to misery, pretending to beating a horse at the wrong end. I'm going to leave it at that and say good luck to all of us. God bless America. God bless our troops. God bless our endeavors. And may heaven, for God's sake, please have mercy on us all, because we're going to need it. Shalom. Have a good day.